Good
Hey,
morning.
Terry, hear me? Well, I'm here, so the link works.
Let me go see if I can hear you now.
Uh,
There I do.
okay, I just made sure I was set to use my headphones as well. So hopefully that works. I'm actually in the office today, so hopefully there's not too much happening behind me. I booked a conference room, but it's being occupied by our CEO right now. So
It's a little hard to boot them out.
a little bit.
Hey, Andrew.
Hello. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
Good morning, everybody. We will get started here in just about a minute or two. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to have you participating today. I'm going to assume we're going to have some more come in. We had quite a few people registered for this one today, and I'm personally excited to see what Clarissa has for us today as well. So it should be kind of an interesting session. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen and just go through a few announcements, and we'll let people kind of trickle in as I run through these. But let me get this part of it out of the way, and we'll then proceed with our lesson here for today. All right, so this is the Des Moines user group. Today's June 16th. We're talking everything we can talk about to optimize a Lightning record page. So again, pretty excited to see what we can learn today off of this one. And then Clarissa is official as of today, as of just what, like 2 minutes ago, maybe. She received the
Something
notice.
like that, yeah.
Yeah, she received the notice from Salesforce that she is officially now on board as our co-leader. I'm excited about it because that means I don't have to listen to me talk all the time. So very excited about that. And the help is incredible. Clarissa is going to be an awesome addition to the team, and really looking forward to getting to work work more with her. If you need to reach out to either one of us, there's an email address there at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to use that anytime that you want to connect to one of us. The nonprofit user group leaders are Jackie and Joseph, and they have been fairly active. And I think they've been meeting in person. So if you are a part of a nonprofit and interested in connecting with them, or if you're just interested in trying to help other nonprofits, they've got some great sessions that they do. It's really kind of like a Q&A type sessions. They really do a great job there. Our developer user group leaders, Sulib and Jerome, check out what they are up to. I'm not as familiar with where they're at right now, so I don't have a whole lot of information to share there, but they do have their event site as well, or you can reach out to them directly. Upcoming local events. Sorry, excuse me. July 14th, that is off of our normal schedule. So normally we would meet on the third Thursdays. This is the second Thursday. And I bring that up primarily because we have Midwest Dreamin' is falling during the third week of the month. So July 14th, I have Nana Gregg coming. Nana is a very well-known Salesforce leader. She was a part of the no code or low code series that Salesforce put on. If you haven't seen that, it's awesome. You should absolutely watch that. Just Google that and you'll find it. She's fantastic. She's going to be, hopefully, crossing my fingers, she'll be on site. And then we have Eric Dreschfeld. He is for sure on site. He's already got his tickets and everything to be here locally with us. We are going to be meeting in person and virtually. This will be a hybrid event. It'll be the first time we've done this. So hopefully we don't have too many technical challenges with it. But Holmes Murphy has agreed to host us. So we will be in their training rooms. And those of you that have been around a while, at least pre-pandemic, you've seen those rooms before and they're awesome. I would advise you though to come early so that you can eat. If you remember, they only allow eating in their atrium area, and then you would need to then we'll navigate into the training rooms to get started. So do come, make sure you have time to eat before we actually start the event. We are also going to have Matt Will. He is from Principal. He's going to be talking about Shield. This product spotlight is going to be kind of a new thing that Clarissa and I have kind of talked about doing. Instead of doing the Terry's Tidbits, which I personally got a little tired of, we've done it for years. We're going to switch it up a little bit and try to spotlight some of Salesforce's product offerings, so that some of those that maybe we don't see as often, we get a little bit of insight into how they work. So Shield is the one that we're going to talk about next in our next meeting. For those that are curious about that, Matt will cover some of that information for us. Midwest Dreamin' July 20th. I am speaking at that event. Would love to have you guys be there if at all possible. So try to make it to that. That is an awesome and not very expensive conference. It is heavily focused on training, and it's all done by local people. It's not Salesforce people coming in and giving you their sales speech. It's really all locally hosted and fantastic event in Minneapolis. So please come up to that on July 20th and 21st. MidwestDreamin.com, I think, is the website for that. Our next meetings after the one in July, we are going to be talking screen flows again, trying to help people with that concept. So screen flows, August 18th, September 15th, advanced screen flows. And then October 20th is I'm just calling it a show and tell featuring you. We've done this in the past where if you have some interesting tidbit or something that you've built that you'd love to do a show and tell on to the group, please reach out to Clarissa and I, or throw something in the chat window and we'll connect with you about that. That's October 20th. That's still 4 months out, 5 months, something like that. So you got time to prepare for it. But we'd love to feature some of the great things that are happening within our own community and our user groups. So please consider that. That would be fun. More Salesforce opportunities. There's QR codes there. You see this slide every meeting that we do. Upcoming events, Southwest Dreaming in Colors, a new one. I've not seen that one before, but that's also coming up soon. Forcelandia in Portland, Midwest Dream in Minneapolis. The Witness Success is following Midwest Dreaming. I think you can even get discounted tickets if you do both. Tahoe Dreaming is coming up again in August. And then we have the two Salesforce ones, which is the World Tour in New York on June 23rd. And then September 20th through the 22nd is Dreamforce. My understanding is they are anticipating capping the attendance to something around 30,000. So if that's something that you want to attend, please get your tickets in. Registration is going to open up sometime in July. They haven't told us exactly when yet. So it will be a hybrid event. So if you don't go on site, you will be able to participate using the Salesforce Plus platform. I love the office hours stuff, MVP office hours. Anytime you have a Salesforce question, feel free to jump into their meetings. It's just a handful of MVPs willing to help with however they can with whatever questions you might have related to Salesforce. Automation hours, also a great webinar to learn a lot of things focused heavily on flow. And then we also have the flow office hours that I host along with Andy Utkin out of Florida, and that's every second Friday at 1 o'clock. Reminder that we do have a testing center again in town from DMAC. And then for those interested in the getting the platform app builder certification and would like to participate in one of my study groups, again, DMAC is hosting that for us. If you're interested in that, you just need to go out to their website, sign up for that. It's going to start August 16th, run through the 11th every Tuesday, and it just runs over the lunch hour, just like what this meeting is today. Our Slack channel for those interested in that. And that's all I've got for you for the announcement. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clarissa, and she's going to talk to us through Lightning record pages. So take it away, Clarissa.
I will. First off, apologies all. I'm actually traveling and in the office for the first time. So I'm in a shared office. So if you see people walking behind me, hopefully they'll keep it quiet. But just wanted to give that a little heads up there for you. Okay. So this is, I'm guessing something similar. I've certainly had a Lightning page like this. This is a console app with a lot of stuff on it. We have the quick links for related lists. We've got all of the related lists also showing. We got our details, and then over here we've got a screen flow, a single related list. Let's see if I can hide all of your beautiful faces so that I can see my screen. There we go. And then some activity history down here. Now, again, I am in a dev org, so this is not going to look exactly like your orgs, of course. But the important thing that I wanted to point out with this particular scenario is this up here, the page load time. For those of you that attended our last full meeting, Terry did a Terry's tidbits on a brief Terry's tidbits on Lightning pages. And one of the things he talked about was this EPT, which is page load time. So I just turned this on by doing a question mark, EPT visible equals 1 after the URL up here. And that turned this on. So now I just have this little widget that's telling me how long it took to load the page. So I actually just loaded this up when I got into the office this morning, and I haven't touched it since. So it took 5.3 seconds for me to load this page that basically has every possible piece of data on this. I think about the only thing I changed was this is using 100 extra fields instead of 300 extra fields. So the moral of the story is, if you have a lot of stuff on your Lightning page, it's going to take a long time to load. I think we probably all, to some extent, maybe know that from hearing our users give us their feedback on Lightning pages. So obviously we want to make these pages as powerful and impactful and helpful as we can. But I do want to say that this is also going to be very much dependent on what your org looks like, how much data you have, how many fields you have, how many of those fields are populated. So like everything else that we hear, it is very important to maintain good org health. So this was my example page on, if I put everything I possibly can on the page, what does that do to my page load time? And the answer is not good things. This really sucks the page load time and can ultimately result in a poor user experience. So it's definitely important to work with your stakeholders to communicate with them that if having all this information on the page is important to them, then they have to understand that their sacrifice then is it's going to be slow to load the page. Just as a note, I did also find that if I actually had the fields populated, that took even longer to load. So Salesforce will tell you in Optimizer, as we learned last month, that having a lot of fields on the page is not great for performance. Evidently, it's even worse for performance if you actually have good data hygiene and have those fields populated. So something to note there. Okay, so this was kind of my first, this was where I started in my adventure of how can we make the best use of our Lightning pages? Because I certainly have worked in a place where they wanted everything on that account page and they wanted it all at once. I'm going to try to make my window a little smaller. Remote work is great until you come into the office and have to deal with your tiny laptop screen when you're used to having monitors in your home office. So, okay. So I believe on this page, again, we're looking at a console page. I tried to keep things pretty similar to see, what changes can we make that are going to help that user experience or that page load time. So on this one, this is, again, this is the same record. I just gave myself a Lightning page in a different app for the purposes of making this presentation go a little easier for you, so you weren't watching me flip between things and reassign Lightning pages. So on this one, what I did was I took the little flow widget we had up here, and I actually put it behind a tab. So that way it doesn't actually load this flow until I click into it and tell Salesforce to actually go do that. So obviously that helps the page load time here. Now, I will again add an additional caveat that this process is very much trial and error with your org, what happens. Something else, of course, is that Lightning relies a lot on your internet browser caching. So that's also going to make your page load time get progressively faster, especially if you use the same record, which we tend to do. I certainly tend to do for consistency purposes. Like I know that the data is going to be the same, but then the sacrifice there as well, it's already probably cached some of that information. So it's going to inherently just load it a little bit faster anyway. So just bear that in mind as you're doing this exercise yourself in your own org. So on this page, again, like I said, we put the flow behind a tab, and that definitely seemed to improve the page load time. Flip side is now this is an extra click for my users. So if my users needed to put in a case on this, they are going to have to click into it. And again, this is where I have to make the call, either myself or working with my stakeholders on, is that click worth the extra essentially 3 seconds I've given them of page load time? Some other changes I made on this one, I took away that related list quick links and instead just left the related lists on this one. And this may actually, we'll go ahead and go into this page and see if I pulled, I just can't remember if I pulled in all of the related lists individually. I did. So on this one, I wanted to experiment with if I pull in a single related list instead of all of the related lists, does that make the page load time faster? And the answer is maybe. It very much seemed to be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It kind of might be faster sometimes. Again, we're back to there's a lot of, did it cache the information? Did it not? How many records are there? Are we traversing relationships up to another record? Are we not? A lot of factors at play in this one. So I wish I could tell you reliably which one worked better than the other, and I don't have a good answer for you on that one. So I'm sorry, I just don't have an answer. Okay. So again, we had, and look, this time it even loaded faster. I just noticed that. So again, navigating away to the page and back to the page, I now have an even faster load time. So maybe something else to think about if you have a corporate policy that requires like computers be restarted every week or something like that, people are probably going to find that the pages are slower after they do any sort of refresh or clearing their cookies. Honestly, also the things we tell them to do for better performance can maybe make worse performance with Lightning pages in particular, because we're taking away the benefit of having this information cached. And I don't know how many of you have been asked to add a field to a Lightning page, generally in the record detail section, and you go add it, and then it seems to take about 5 years to actually appear there. I know that's certainly been the bane of my existence since Salesforce rolled out Lightning many years ago. Again, we're back to it's a caching problem, and you just kind of have to cross your fingers and hope that it will show up. If you switch back to Classic, it will be there because you've put it on the page. You're just waiting on the browser and Lightning to all kind of get their stuff together and display that for you.
There is a setting in the setup
Is
that
there?
there is.
I'm
Would you
learning
like to know where that is?
I would love to know where that is.
So go into setup.
Okay.
And then type in, I believe it's session settings.
Ooh, I love when I get to learn something when I'm presenting. That's the best.
And then scroll up on that page. It always takes you to the very bottom of it. There's a section in here, go down just a little bit more, caching. And there's the checkbox that says enable secure and persistent browser caching to improve performance. If that's checked, you are going to have to hit your refresh multiple times in order for something to show. You have it unchecked, which is perfect for what you're doing. But
yes,
by default, that will be checked in your production orgs, which can be frustrating if you are making page changes and hoping to see them right away, because like Clarissa said, you will have to hit that multiple times.
Yeah. Oh, it's so frustrating. And I'll have users say, well, I just opened it and it's not there. And I'll have another user say, well, I opened it and it is there. I'm like, well, you haven't visited one of those pages recently then, if it's showing up for you. So that's good to know. We all learned something if you haven't already learned something about page load times on Lightning pages. So thanks, Terry. Okay, I'll pop over to my next page. So this one, I went a completely different route. We're in standard navigation. So I moved away. Okay, do we have a difference between console pages and standard pages? I don't know about in your orgs, but in my orgs, I find that admins tend to prefer standard navigation and end users tend to prefer console. I'm guessing it's just how long have we been using it? What are our preferences? All that fun stuff. So in this one, we have, again, standard page. Page load time isn't bad. It's not great. It's okay. Again, the colors kind of tell you that also, because I think our less than 2 seconds is green. Our 5 seconds is red and angry. So that's really helpful about this EPT. Just as a side note, I don't think that adding this really slowed things down. I know there is a setting, again, Terry talked about it in our last big meeting, that you can turn on that is enabling like a debug mode on your user account, and that will likely slow things down for you. But I found that just having the EPT show on the page didn't really seem to have an impact on performance, other than just being really helpful to tell me how long pages were taking to load. So, okay, we'll go back to our standard navigation page here. this has a lot of the same information I had. I guess the only part I didn't have drop in here was that flow. But on this one, I kind of played with it a little bit, and I actually put cases in to their own tab. This is something I found provides a better user experience, is actually giving them, especially if you're using apps based on roles or business processes, really giving them a call out for specific related lists can be really helpful for a user. So we still show them all the related lists here on the related tab. So we have everything, but on this one, I've decided to call out cases and using one of the newer Salesforce features for, I believe they call these enhanced related lists. So this one, I added a filter for all open cases, and then I just did essentially the exact same thing and added one for closed cases. Adding that didn't really seem to change the performance too much. Let me just double check my notes here that I'm telling you the right thing when I say that. Okay, so I did have, if I added a record limit to the enhanced list, that helped it go faster. But then adding the second list actually slowed it down. So I would say across the board, the one thing I found to be truly consistent in trying to optimize my Lightning pages is that the less stuff you have on the page, the faster it will load. However, no one finds a blank page useful. So very much trial and error with this and trying to find what's going to work, what's not going to work. So on this one, again, it's probably cached some information. So it's getting faster. I bet if I refresh this page, it may be even faster. We'll see. Yep. Okay. It was even faster that time. Just an item of note, because I found that this is different in a lot of different orgs I've worked in. Sometimes it's faster to land on the related list first. As I recall, that's actually like the Salesforce default page is you have a tab for details and a tab for related, and it usually defaults to related. Which one of those loads faster is entirely dependent on how your org is structured and where a lot of your data lies. Realistically, what's going to take longer is whatever has the most data. So if you know in general that your accounts don't have a lot of related records, then the related tab is probably going to load faster. If you know that they have a lot of related information and you only have 50 fields on your details page, it's probably smarter to have it land on details. So the important part is really working with your users to determine what is important to them and how can you make the Lightning page function for them. Something that I find helpful is visibility filters. I don't think I actually use that too much on these. I played with that at one point, and actually adding a filter on something did seem to slow the page down. But to me, that tends to be a sacrifice worth making if I'm ultimately making my users have a better user experience and showing them the relevant information at the right time. So maybe some of these things on this related list aren't useful. Like maybe opportunities don't matter if it's, we'll say like a customer who hasn't bought from us in 5 years. Maybe I have something that looks at like last opportunity close date, and I'm going to run a filter to hide this opportunity list. So if I wanted to do something like that, we'll just do it. We have time. This is a short and sweet launch and learn for you. So I'll just make a change on the fly. Again, this little widget, while trying to be very helpful, is questionable at best as to whether or not it will be reliable. So definitely recommend working in hopefully a full copy sandbox if you have one at your fingertips, so you can get a true feel for the data skew while working with page load times. Sandboxes are awesome, except for that part where a developer sandbox just doesn't have the same data, and refreshing a page doesn't always refreshing a sandbox does not refresh the data, and you have to start all over with your sandbox seeding. So
Yeah,
we'll just pull.
Yeah, interrupt real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Olivia just put in the chat window that the new dynamic related lists are cool, but it turns out they aren't supported on mobile. Did not know that.
Oh, yeah, I did not know that either.
It was
Good,
a very
good.
sad moment. So just wanted to prevent that for anybody else who accidentally ends up in that situation.
Good
Thank
to
you.
know. Good to know.
Man, that really stinks. I guess that would be the first use case I've actually had of having a separate phone page layout. Which, if you didn't know, you can do this where you can change your form factor to update. So yeah, this would probably not be a great experience on phone. I'm fortunate in that most of my employers most of the companies I've worked in have not really had a lot of mobile users. So I haven't had to think about the mobile experience. But yes, if you work in an org with a lot of mobile users, definitely something you want to keep in mind. Are your Lightning pages friendly for folks on a mobile? And it may be worth creating a separate experience or even just updating the page to work well with mobile. And all I did was just in the page editor change what it looks like for desktop versus phone.
Yeah, I would encourage that if you have people on mobile, because even things as simple as throwing your related list on the page, it takes multiple clicks to get into an actual record to see those related records on your mobile device. And if you can eliminate that extra click by giving the phone people their own unique page layout, you'll make them a lot happier.
For sure.
So play around with that if you are mobile.
Yeah, like on this one, I might say if I know that they're for sure going to need a particular list, I may actually just add it here.
That's what I would do as well. And because if you bring in a separate tab, they're going to have to click into the tab, and then they see here's the list of related items. They then have to click the item they want, and then they can get to finally a record. So it's like 3 clicks to get there. Where if you do what you just did there, Clarissa, it's 2. I can click in and see all of my records and select the record I want.
Yep.
And it's 1 or 2 clicks seems to make a big difference for people. So
it does. So then if we switch it back to desktop, because I haven't actually done it. So now I have cases showing up here. So I would probably want to create a whole separate page that I'm going to work on for phone in this instance. Although I do wonder if you could filter this.
Yeah, a lot of times on the phone ones, it looks to me that if you've been around in the classic days, it looks an awful lot like a classic page layout when I set it up for mobile, because everything is just right there.
Boom. So now I actually just added a filter here. So this cases list is only going to show if they're on a phone. So you could do this for tablets. You could really, this is probably what I would do so that you don't have to manage an extra page layout.
Good idea.
Yeah. Again, I don't often have to work with phone page layouts, so I appreciate all the thoughts on that.
Just to clarify the suggestion on having multiple pages, you can't assign page layouts or Lightning record pages, I guess, based on device, right?
So you're just saying, I don't think you can. Yeah,
so I would definitely like that group of users, if you can identify them, they should just have
a different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I would probably honestly talk to the users to see, does that make sense? Or does it make more sense to do something like what I've done here, where I'm going to just add different pieces in and give them a filter based on what device they're using. A lot of it is just
click on the activation. I thought you could.
I don't know. See, you can tell that I clearly don't do this.
I promise the users who use it on the mobile will always tell you what they like and don't like. They're very clear.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I had the form factor there. That's why I thought I usually keep it, desktop and phone, but because it had that form factor on the app default.
Is that it?
I think that might be where, if you assign it or something there.
Let's just see what happens. We'll do it on this one.
I believe that you're right, that by selecting it, the form factor, I think it does automatically move to that on your mobile device.
Hmm.
It's been a while since I've tested that, but I'm
Yeah.
almost certain that does.
So
I
can
think
I,
it would. Yeah.
Carissa, will you just recap what you just showed in the activation section?
Yes. If you go to the app default, it
Mhm.
has this form factor here.
Okay.
So if you click on assign as app default and then pick one, and let me just do Sales Console and see what happens. So here I can actually assign the form factor. So this is going to render this page I'm currently on as the page that happens when someone is using the Sales Console on desktop and phone. If I select desktop, this lightning page is only going to be used if they select Sales Console in on a desktop, and then phone would be there on a phone in Sales Console. So this is the page I want them to use.
So the process would be I choose desktop. If you wanted to manage them separately versus
Yes,
the form factor
versus
components,
together.
then you
Yes.
would clone it and assign it to that same app, but with just phone.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure I was tracking. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for making me reiterate. That was great. We all learn together. Okay, any other questions while we're kind of at a little pausing point?
I was just going to say, if you do that where you make a phone or a desktop only and you don't make the corresponding other one, it'll go back to your org default. If they,
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yep.
So you want to, if you, that's also about knowing your users. How many users do you have on mobile? And just as like a general thought there, you really want to evaluate, you know, how much of your time is that worth? Like if you have like 2 people out of 200 using mobile, it may not be worthwhile to you for you to really work hard on giving them a good mobile experience. So if I could offer you any advice that I've learned in my career, it's definitely making sure there's a good business payoff for your efforts there. So it's okay to tell people no, which is something I'm still learning. So, okay,
If it's
cool.
the CEO, you might want to. give
That's
them a
true.
good
If it's
mobile
this,
experience.
yeah, if it's the CEO, you should probably put the time in. Definitely. Okay, those are honestly kind of the big things that I identified as ways to improve. So yeah, I will honestly stop sharing my screen and I would love to hear things that the rest of you have tried to do and found worked, maybe didn't work. Let's learn from each other. If you have anything you want to share about what you've learned with your Lightning pages.
So Amanda, I have a question for you. I see in your chat, you mentioned that you're getting an error when you have too many components on the mobile page.
It's not necessarily an error. It's in that page analysis part. It will tell you have too many components because it ideally wants you to have, I think, like 10 to 13 components. And then after 15, you start getting into the yellow. And when you get to like 21 components, it's like you have too many components. And so what I'm wondering is if 5 or 6 of those components are really only showing for mobile, is Salesforce still behind the scenes dinging you and increasing that page speed? Is it like, so going to is it better to have a totally different layout for mobile versus, or a totally different Lightning record page for mobile than trying to add those additional components onto one page?
And I suspect that's because they're anticipating mobile being slower to load because of it going across the cellular networks. And so they're probably trying to save you from yourself is likely what they're saying there. That's interesting though. I haven't seen that messaging.
But it's like they aren't respecting the fact that if you have, like, I might have 5 desktop only components and then 3 that are only for mobile, and they aren't recognizing that, total, I might have 20 components on the page, but only 15 show up on one format and then, 13 show up on the other.
Yeah, honestly, that kind of makes sense to me. Just from the standpoint of when I was doing my testing and adding filtering in general to any kind of component, it did to some extent seem to slow the page down. And my assumption is because it has to evaluate that filter. So the strongest thing I could think of, which I know is not fun, is to honestly try it both ways and see which one gives you a better experience on a mobile device. Does having the using one page with those filtered components load faster than having a separate page? So I wish I could tell you that I knew what the answer was. But with this one in particular, I feel like you're better off just trying it to see what happens. But I also am a huge fan of just using filters, even though I know they're going to slow down the page load, because I know, to me, that sacrifice is worth it for making my life easier by having to manage fewer pages and also showing users the right information at the right time.
I agree. It's almost like a pro and con of, okay, if I create the extra page,
Yep.
am I going to remember to update it every time I have a change, or are users going to quickly not get some new features? So, making sure that you understand and that everyone on your team understands. I have another question though, that I'm wondering. You had mentioned that you noticed that when all 100 fields were filled out, it slowed the page down. So we have activities, like all of our users want to see their activity timeline front and center. That's, we can't get them to move it, but some of them have, a ton of stuff on that activity timeline. Did you play around with that at all? Do we see page speeds?
I didn't, because I was in a dev org, but I can tell you from just like personal experience, I know that that activity timeline can be a real bear. It does have filtering on it, which I want to say does persist for each user. But that's also, again, something you have to communicate to users, and they kind of have to manage themselves. It's not necessarily something, and if I'm speaking incorrectly, please someone correct me. It's not something that you can set at like an org default level, but there are definitely filters you can set. So, or at least that a user can set on their own page when they're looking. There's like a little, I suppose I could just share my screen again and show you.
I was going to say, I was going to do the same thing on that, but go ahead and take it if you want.
Yeah, I should be sharing my Chrome window. And we'll go down over here. So you can see the filters right here are showing, and I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, so we have a little cog, and then you can set these to be particular activity types, anything like that, if they want to filter it to their own. And
is that sticky for all people?
I want to say it's sticky per user.
Per user, okay.
So yeah, because you have the apply and the apply and save. So if I do apply and save, and let me actually just open up another account and see if it kept that. It did. Yeah, so it's holding that across, but I'm pretty sure this is per user and not an org setting.
So if you go to a contact, does it keep it there as well?
That's a good question. Let's find a contact.
There's a related contact runner.
And yes.
It did, look at that. Cool.
Yep.
Oh, that's nice. I did not know that it persisted across other objects, so that's cool.
I didn't know it did either across objects. I knew it did across records, but yeah, that object thing is really awesome.
So I was going to share one other thing related to the activity.
Sure.
I'll share my screen. And when I'm in the editing of the account, and you have that analysis piece here, but if you slide down that component, almost always I see activity as the highest one. So when you're wanting to know what the impact is, I don't necessarily trust, like Clarissa said, I don't trust this chart that well as far as its prediction, but it does give you, I think, a pretty good indication of here's where you're hitting performance issues. And so if you can do something about it, simply, and I don't know that users would love this, but if I took and moved this activity behind a tab, look what that did down to my performance breakdown. Just by moving that, now it's my highlights panel. That's my slowest element on the page. So hiding things behind a tab can have a significant impact. Not necessarily a great user experience, but an impact nonetheless.
Yeah, it definitely depends on just how your teams function and what's important to them, and making sure that that's what they're seeing. And a lot of it's just user education, like teaching them they can filter their activities if that's something that's important to them. I've worked at places that lived and died by the activity, and I've worked at places that no one cared about the activity. So definitely org dependent.
The other thing that, and Clarissa, you kind of hit on this a little bit, is that page detail, the number of fields that you have on your page detail does make a big difference. Again, it's a matter of how much stuff shows on that initial load page. And so if you can take and break up that detail page so that maybe you put it, I'm losing the name now of the component that we can add fields to, and then throw that in behind another tab.
That would be an action.
Actions. Thank you. Thank you. For some reason, that was going completely out of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can throw some of those things into an action and then add it as a tab to try to eliminate some of the number of fields. In this particular org that we were demoing with, I created some code that created 300 plus fields on the account object. When I put all of those fields on the page on that detail page layout, I went into the red category really quick as soon as it loaded. As soon as I then took and moved those to actions and off onto separate tabs and got my detail page down to something that was a little bit more digestible, I saw an improvement in my load time. So if you're in a large organization that has tons and tons of fields, that might be another one you might think about.
That's definitely a good one. And again, that the actions and using the related record component is what you want to do on a standard object. Custom objects I believe dynamic forms is now GA. Yeah. And I think has been. So that's also a solution if you use a lot of custom objects. You can do a dynamic form where you're basically putting that filtering directly on the fields themselves and sections of the page. I didn't really go into that because I was looking at the account page, because for most of us, that is our primary object. So focused on that for this particular session today.
So I've done the action stuff as well, and it's really great. The only warning I would want to give people is remember that if you take a field off your page layout, that means you can't like edit it on a list view. It's not technically on the page anymore. So if it's a field that your team needs to be able to edit, that's not a great option for it. But yeah, other than that, it's been great. I've used that to kind of bucket and move fields around just to get them off the main page as well.
It can be really great, especially for like updating a parent record from a child record. I've used it that way too. So
yeah, I think it kind of creates an interesting user experience that way too, because it does segment your fields into areas where they make sense, as opposed to all being in that long page layout.
Definitely.
Other questions or things people have ran into? I don't see any additional questions in the chat. I don't see any questions in chat on YouTube for us either. What's interesting to me, and Clarissa and I kind of talked about this before the meeting even, that there really isn't a lot of Salesforce documentation on this that we found. So everything that we've learned has kind of been like what it sounds like some of you have been learning too, is you trial and error and see what works and what doesn't work. But I think the key piece is how much can you eliminate off of that initial load page and still give the users a good experience is kind of the biggest key for how quickly that page is going to load. The other thing that I find that's easy to forget about doing, a lot of times I hear users will say things like, I've got to click into multiple pages in order to see things. And that certainly does take a long time. If I'm looking at a page and I have to click into the actual contact record to see some of the key contact data, if I'm not leveraging those compact layouts effectively, that's something that you might want to look at, because then I can just hover over a contact's name and then see a pop-up that shows me all of the critical data or key pieces of data that are important to the user. And if you can do that and train your users then to just hover over those links, that can save them a lot of time as well, because then they don't have to click in and wait for another page to load. So that's another thing to maybe think about if you're not already using those compact layouts.
And having more than one per object too, so you can filter it by profile, is also very powerful.
Oh, good thought. Yeah.
Kind of along those same lines, kind of in combination with that in the actions that we talked about, we've used actions like on an account and then displayed them on the contacts. Like if there's just certain fields that you need from a related object, but you want to save somebody some clicks, that's another way you can get to it.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion.
I've done that myself. That's a good one. So this is more, Donna, sorry, I'm addressing your question about doing this versus record types. I like to think about record types as really the structure of your data. That's much more of a Salesforce architecture question. The things we're talking about now, I think, are really about optimizing your Lightning record pages. And you may have different record pages based on record types. I certainly encourage using record types because I think it makes your data stronger, but you also have to be cognizant of what you're doing when you utilize record types. So I'm never going to tell you to not use record types because I think they're very important. But this is something about, I would say, how you've configured your instance. Like I currently work somewhere where rather than assigning Lightning pages to profiles, we actually build Lightning pages for each app. So we have a customer service app that uses customer service specific Lightning pages. And we don't use, so our assignment then goes to the app and not so much the record type or the profile. Now it may in the future, I happen to work at a startup, so we tend to just go fast. But as our org evolves, it may become that we are separating this based on record type because we need different information on a prospect account than a customer account. So definitely, this is something you would use in conjunction with record types. It's not going to replace record types. I think about filtering components on Lightning pages tends to be more along the lines of if you have an object with a status or a stage, like an opportunity, there may be a group of fields that is more important in the middle of your sales cycle than at the end. Or lots of times, especially, there's a group of fields we care about when we close a deal because we need that to pass off to the team who handles the onboarding process for a new customer. So that would be an instance when you might use that filtering, like you're still on an opportunity, but now we care about where in the sales cycle is the opportunity. And maybe we care about different things based on what the record type of the opportunity is. So that's where we may do some component filtering based on record types. I would actually give you the same advice that we were talking about with form factors with desktop versus phone. It depends on how much the information differs for each of your record types as to whether you feel like that merits having a separate page or just rendering components based on the record types. I tend to always start with a filter because usually it's just one thing that I'm adding. So to me, I just add a new component to my Lightning page, and then I add a filter based on what's the record type. And then in the future, if I now have like 7 components that I need to show with this particular record type, then I may say, okay, I'm now going to create a separate Lightning page that I will assign using app profile record type. So that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully that helped clarify for you.
Any other questions that people have? This topic or another one, either way.
thank you also so much for everyone's comments and input. I really appreciate hearing from all of you because as Terry said, it's kind of awkward to hear yourself talk a lot. So it's always nice to hear from other people.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've got another 9 minutes or so. That is more than enough time for those of you who have not registered yet for next month's user group. I can't express more how cool it is to have two people of this caliber coming on site for us. So if you haven't seen in the chat, I did give you some information there to adjust your ticket if you are virtual to try to come on in person. To be able to meet Eric is probably, he's a good friend of mine, but he's also one of those guys that is the best people connector of probably anybody I know. He knows everybody. And he's just one of those people that is great to have in your tool belt as somebody to contact. You never know when you might need to communicate with somebody that has the experience that he does. He's not a Salesforce admin. He'll absolutely tell you that. But he has been in the Salesforce ecosystem for forever and knows more people than I probably could ever imagine. And he's just a wonderful guy. So it's a good chance to meet somebody like that. Nana has been a Salesforce admin. She's been a consultant. She has done just about everything there is to do on the Salesforce platform, and another amazing person and a great resource to have available. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, please get your tickets for that. I'd love to get a good count of how many we'll have on site. I know some of you are uncomfortable coming in person to some of these events. Still, that's okay. I don't want to shame those of you who are going to come virtually. I love having you virtual as well. We want everybody there, but I would love to see the combination of both on-site and in-person be one of our largest events that we've had, because we've got two just absolutely fantastic people coming, and so take advantage of it. Get signed up if you haven't already. Do consider coming in person, because I do think that's going to give you a really neat opportunity if you're comfortable doing so. And with that, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and close out today's meeting. Thank you so much for coming. Feel free to ask questions real quick. If I don't hear anybody talk, I'm going to go ahead and close this down. All right. Great job, Clarissa. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care, guys. It's good to talk to you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.